Deputy Owen Murphy.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Mulryan. A lot of the areas I wanted to discuss have already been raised by other members of the committee, so if I go over old ground, just let me know and I'll move on. On page 5 of your written statement, you talked about, in paragraph 4, whether stated in the loan agreement or not, the financial institution generally required a high-level meeting with senior management. And this would happen on an annual basis to review the past year, to look at the progress on the financed assets, the general business discussion about the wider economy and the real estate sector, and Ballymore's future intentions. So these annual meetings, which were in the loan agreement or not, would this be a kind of a half-day meeting? Would it be a lunch meeting? Could you just tell me a bit about those kinds of meetings?
No, they would be in the bank, I would say average 2 to 3 hours.
Okay. At these meetings, would the banks, as they talked about Ballymore's future intentions, would they be pitching you for business? Would they be suggesting extra credit facilities or a particular site?
Not really, no. Not really. To be my experience of the banks, they would be looking at their overall commitment to Ballymore and how we're performing, and looking at the overall, even though everything would be ring-fenced, the individual bank would be looking at their loan book and how we're going. Many times at those meetings, they would have told us that they won't have any more exposure to Ballymore.
They were going to have no more...
More exposure.
Sorry, more or no more exposure?
No more.
No more.
That they felt, and that, at times they would have asked us not to come back looking for any more until we had paid down so much debt.
Okay, so none of those occasions, none of the banks that you did business with came to you or suggested to you that they had something to offer that you weren't looking for?
No, not absolutely.
And in those discussions, did you ever get a chance to express your own concerns about what might be happening in the property market in Ireland, or the types of lending the banks were pursuing, given that, as you said earlier, it was your business to know what was going on?
I think that through that period, I wouldn't have very much discussions with the bank on the Irish operation. We were buying a lot of land in London through that period, so my meetings would be with those banks would be in London, and we'd be talking about the operation over there, because that was at that stage in the 2001, 2008. That's where we were putting our funds, and that's where we were acquiring land, and that's where all the focus was.
Okay.
So there'd be very little discussion about the Irish housing market.
Okay. Moving on to the next page of your statement, you talked about under section 5 in subparagraph 3, the rapid increased supply of bank lending to these potential property developers. These are the new developers that came online. Did you notice a change in your relationship with the bank? Did you notice a change in the culture in the bank? What was that change?
With some banks, not the more.
Well, with some banks, what was the change that you noticed?
They were probably more focused on new business than dealing with old business and old loans, and historic loans that had to be. They were focused on new business, I would say, and new customers. That was the drive, and probably maybe not in all cases.
But did you ever express concern to the banks then about these 1,000 new property developers and the fact that they were chasing their business, and any concerns you might have had as to their suitability as borrowers?
No, I didn't.
Okay. And was it easier for you to get credit or financing or loans at the time as a result of any change that you noticed in the banks at the time, whether to old or new lenders?
No, I think we had the same procedure and model. I think that continued right through.
Okay. And would you have been aware of anyone that you dealt with in the bank making commission off the lending that they were giving to your company? No. Okay. And then just on page 7 of your opening statement, you talk about the pitches you made for certain sites, the bids. You learned that one was 35% off the pace at the time. So in one way, I suppose that reflects what you thought the value was of the land, but at the same time, you still made the bid. Can I ask why?
Well, on the glass bottle side, we didn't bid, we withdrew.
Okay.
because we were remotely close to
Okay.
the asking price. So we withdrew.
With juries in Burlington?
Well, with the Burlington, why? Why? Because one of the banks indicated to me that we weren't doing much in Dublin, and we should be in the Dublin market. Made a proposal that it be done through private banking, and we should go for the Burlington site.
So the bank approached you over the Burlington site?
Yes.
Sorry, just a moment ago I thought you told me that the banks never approached
Well,
you.
this was private banking. Private banking.
I don't understand the distinction.
Sorry.
This is a private bank or private?
The private banking, not the bank. The private equity part of the bank.
But part of the bank?
No, yeah, private bank.
I mean, can we not deduce from that it is the bank then approaching you to go into a deal?
Yes.
It is.
Yes.
So in relation to my earlier question when I asked you if any of the banks ever approached you about new lending or about investing in a particular site, the answer to that question would be...
Well, yeah, but that wasn't lending. I wasn't, in this case, on the Burlington side, I was offered to come in, use Ballymore as the delivery of that particular site.
Okay. And this suggestion was put to you by private banking in one of the banks?
Yes.
And so just to go back to the earlier line of questioning then, did this happen often?
No, that was the only one.
That was the only time it happened?
Yeah.
Okay. You knew at the time that the market was overheated and there was too much debt in the real estate sector, but you still went and bid. Mm-hmm. Why?
I suppose, and said we shouldn't have done that, but we felt that we had very little in Ireland, and we have an Irish operation, and we like to keep a certain activity here, and I suppose this particular one attracted us because the private banking was putting up the money, and we weren't taking any financial risk.
You weren't taking any financial risk?
No.
So how did that work?
It's the same model as worked with Nationwide for 22 years.
Okay. So it was an easy call then for you to make if there's no risk involved, only an upside?
It was, yeah, but we still didn't pay the asking price. We were 120 million under.
Okay, so if there's no risk involved, why not up the asking price? There's no risk to you, so you've nothing to lose, and if you ask a bid a higher price, you could potentially gain.
Could you?
So why not? Why bid low? Why not bid high?
Because what's the point? I mean, what's the point of working for 5 years and losing money?
I don't understand.
Well, I mean to say, you're getting 50% of the profits on this. I'm using the Burlington as an example. You're getting 50% of the profits. Okay, you pay too much for the land. Okay, 100 million too much or 120 million. You're going to get nothing anyway. So what's the point?
But I thought you said there was no risk to making the investment on your part.
Time is money and time is risk.
Okay.
So you don't you pay the price that you think is appropriate, regardless of whether you are putting in no money or not. That was the way that's what was our decision on that.
Okay.
So we thought that we would go with this. We were taking no financial risk, but we still bid what we thought was the appropriate price. We didn't take into consideration paying too much because we weren't putting anything in to make sure we got it.
Okay. So, given the overheating that you're aware of in the market, and there's too much debt as well in the real estate sector, and it was the first time an approach like this had been made to you, did that concern you at the time?
Well, as I said to you, probably was influencing it. We had very low activity in the Irish market, and we would always like to have to keep activity in the Irish market, and that's what we influencing us, just to do one project and keep it moving.
Okay. And just on page 7 as well, in your statement, you say Ballymore sought to manage its multi-bank borrowing by 1, availing of credit from various providers so as to mitigate any level of dependence or over-reliance on a specific source. Were you successful in this?
Sorry?
Were you successful in availing of credit from various providers so as to mitigate any level of dependence or over-reliance on a specific source?
Probably not. When we see where we have with NAMA, it obviously not.
Yeah, I mean, just because looking at page 11, the table you provided is very helpful. I mean, the majority of your lending is with one institution, Anglo-Irish Bank. So how did it come to be that I suppose that the policy of Ballymore was to spread its risk across banks in terms of its borrowing, but then it ended up with having 50% of its borrowing from one Irish institution?
How did it happen?
How did that happen? I mean, was there a breakdown inside Ballymore in terms of your internal lending strategies, your risk procedures?
I can't answer that because they were a long-standing bank. They used to, we were hugely successful with them. Why it was 1.18 billion? It was just the way we operated with them over 20 years, built slowly.
Okay. You also said that you sought to manage your multi-bank borrowing by, point 2, presenting opportunities to several providers seeking the most competitive commercial terms. If we again look at the table on page 11, it would appear that Anglo-Irish...
Mindful of the sensitivity of the commercial information.
I'm just using information that's been provided.
Sure. You just need to kind of put that in space.
Again, on page 11, Anglo-Irish Bank seem to have always secured the most competitive commercial terms for you.
I don't agree with that. I mean,
Okay.
I don't agree with that. I think that it varied from development to development.
Okay. But can I ask then as a final question, would you have ever borrowed from Anglo, even if it wasn't on the most competitive or most competitively commercial terms available?
Probably would.
Probably would.
Yeah.
Why?
Because of the long-standing relationship and the trust that we have built up over 20 years.
Okay. And just my final question then, would you ever have sought to borrow from an Irish bank, been refused and gone to its subsidiary in the UK to borrow, or vice versa?
No, definitely not.
No. Okay.